Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTB World. They say that cleanliness and order are just not matters of instinct, rather they are matters of education. And like most great things, we must learn to cultivate a taste for them. Having said that, the very important question, which is then of course very pertinent, is the fact that have we as a society learned to do just that or not? And this is something upon which we'll be shedding light today. Overall, we'll be talking about cleanliness and of course the very importance of it for us as a Pakistani society. We'll be talking about this not only from a health perspective but also from a religious and of course from an environmental perspective too. In this regard, we'll also be trying to delve upon the social stigma which is then unfortunately still encompassing issues like these. Why do we as a Pakistani society still see shy away from talking about important issues like these? How can we as a Pakistani society work towards having more honest and more inclusive conversations about perhaps developing better hygiene habits too? In this regard, we'll also be talking at a very basic level that where do we see that link between not only cleanliness but also the ecological balance too, and what importance does Islam per se actually place on having of course good cleanliness too. All of this today, that too with an extremely pertinent panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for today's show is Ms. Fakhra Shahid. She's a senior educationist. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show. Alongside her, I have Ustaz Waqar Nawaz, who is an Islamic scholar. Assalamu alaikum sir, and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
My third panelist for today's show is Dr. Nadia Ayub. She's an environmentalist. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
And via telephone line, we'll be joined by Ms. Maryam Malik, who is a community health expert. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show. Now, before we start the discussion on today's topic, let's have a look at this brief report.
Firstly, cleanliness plays a vital role in safeguarding public health. By keeping our surroundings clean, we can prevent the spread of diseases and ensure a healthier community for everyone. In Islam, cleanliness is emphasized as an essential aspect of faith. It's not only about physical cleanliness but also purity of the soul. Following these principles promotes a sense of well-being and spiritual upliftment. From an environmental perspective, cleanliness is crucial for preserving our planet. By reducing litter and pollution, we can protect our ecosystems, wildlife, and natural resources. Cleanliness fosters sustainability and contributes a cleaner, greener future for generations to come. In Punjab, the government has taken commendable initiatives to promote cleanliness across the province. Through various campaigns and programs, they are raising awareness and actively involving communities in maintaining a clean environment. These efforts are not only improving sanitation but also fostering a sense of civic responsibility among citizens. In conclusion, cleanliness is not just a habit but a way of life that benefits us all. Let's continue to uphold cleanliness as a priority for a healthier, more sustainable future.
Welcome back from the report. Now to get the conversation started with you, when we do talk about cleanliness or lack of hygiene per se, we do understand that this is that one issue which impacts the entire society. So as a community health expert, how do you see that link and how do you feel this is something which then just doesn't impact one's physical health, but the effect is more long lasting that way? It also impacts the environment at large, it also impacts the public health, it also impacts the social settings that people operate in.
Certainly, poor hygiene practices can lead to a wide range of health risks and contribute to the spread of infectious diseases. I can give you some examples of common diseases associated with inadequate hygiene. For example, diarrheal illnesses where improper hand hygiene, contaminated water, and unsanitary food handling can lead to a transmission of bacteria, viruses, and parasites, and diseases like cholera, norovirus, and rotavirus. And these illnesses can result in dehydration and even leading to deaths in children and elderly. Similarly, respiratory infections have if we have poor hygiene practices such as not covering coughs and sneezes and failing to wash hands regularly, we saw it in COVID. It can facilitate the spread of respiratory pathogens and can lead to illnesses such as common cold, COVID, influenza, pneumonia, and bronchitis. Even vector-borne diseases like malaria and dengue or flies and rodents environments, they lead to such illnesses. Overall, if you see that maintaining good hygiene practices, including hand washing with soap and water, practicing proper food hygiene, ensuring clean water sources, and maintaining clean living environments, they are very crucial for preventing this transmission of infectious diseases and safeguarding public health.
That's very rightly put by yourself, madam, because we do understand the fact that then you see this is something which impacts one's various aspects of life, on which I'll come to you, madam, and here we must take your narrative too. So when we do talk about this from an educationist perspective, we must appreciate the fact that yes, cleanliness is extremely important, that too in schools, in universities and colleges too. But how do you as an educationist see it or link it with actually impacting students' academic performance?
Right. I think there's a very direct and a significant link with education and the environment in which that learning is taking place. So when we talk about conducive environment for learning, that means that it needs to be a safe, clean, clutter-free, organized environment. So why is that important? It's not just important from the way they'll be learning, but it is a social space. So within that social space, if there is the possibility of passing on of infectious disease, so you can understand that children will be falling sick more frequently, absenteeism would be on the rise. Similarly, it's also directly related to their psycho-emotional well-being.
Right, their mental well-being.
Their mental well-being.
Because you see, green spaces per se, they help you feel better about yourselves.
True. So to give them that sense of calm, that sense of a safe and a very, very lively environment, it adds, natural environment adds to their understanding of themselves. So that is important, and also the fact that it would give them a sense of pride and belonging.
I was
also
about to say that. It kind of instills that sense of pride in you.
Yes.
If you are coming from a clean environment, whatever that environment so be, you automatically feel more confident about yourself to at a very core level. Sir, but coming towards you, when we do talk about the very core fundamental importance of cleanliness, that too in Islam, how would you explain that to be? We do understand that yes, from a worldly perspective, cleanliness is that one virtue which would of course help us be disease free, but from an Islamic perspective, what importance is it then attributed?
Thank you very much, Barrister Fatima, for giving the opportunity. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of emphasis on cleanliness, and the one hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which says, "At-tahuru shatrul iman," that is tahara, that is cleanliness, is part of iman, right? So therefore, that shows iman is something where everything begins from. So if you say that my beginning, my iman, and our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that cleanliness is part of that, right? So that means a practicing Muslim needs to be good at cleanliness. Another verse of the Quran, which is 74:4, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Cleanse your garments and keep away from pollution."
Right.
Right. So that shows that our religion, and also if you look at the ibadah, right, all the ibadahs, the first thing, what do we have to do? Cleanse ourselves.
Right. So
Yes.
cleanliness is basically half of it, and also would it be fair to say then that you see cleanliness is that one prerequisite for actually acquiring your spiritual purification too?
Oh, definitely, because you see the physical cleanliness is the first thing. Like if you say, okay, I want to have peace and my connection with Allah through salah or namaz, but for that you need to have wudu, or you to be in a state of purity, right? So the physical cleanliness comes first, followed by the spiritual purity
Right.
of oneself, and which has been emphasized in the Quran and the Hadith as well.
Right, sir. On which I'll come to you, Dr. Saib, and here we must talk about this from an environmentalist perspective. In this regard, there are some findings which I would like to quote. The WHO 2023 findings very clearly say that approximately 24% of all estimated global deaths are actually linked to the environment. And in this regard, it's very pertinent to mention that mortality rate is also attributed to household and ambient air pollution, which is an extremely significant concern. So when we talk about this vis-a-vis the the ecological balance. How do you see cleanliness intersected with the ecological balance?
Right. Thank you so much, Fatma, for having me on the show.
You're most welcome.
Well, definitely, because cleanliness is an important aspect, and it's crucial for maintaining an ecological balance, a healthy ecological balance, and a healthy environment. And proper sanitation, hygiene, proper waste management and disposal, they ensure that pollutants are not being added to soil, air and water. Hence, because like you just mentioned, WHO's statistics, there's another statistic by WHO which states that approximately 1 million people, they die every year owing to diarrhea because of consumption of unsafe drinking water.
That's very true, and in this regard, one thing that I would like to add here is also the fact that by the UN Human Rights Council in 2021, cleanliness per se was recognized to be a very core fundamental human right. So in this regard, to what extent do you feel that we as a Pakistani nation have been able to honor this right? Because a lot of times you also understand the fact we might have laws and policies to this effect, which of course ensure that cleanliness, or for that matter in the broader picture, right to life, is something which is given out to citizens. But the question then is, to what extent have we been able to effectively implement the same?
Yes, when we look around, especially in Pakistan, we just recently experienced one of the worst smog episodes ever. There were record cases of bronchitis reported, as well as eye infections and skin infections owing to air pollution. And this is all because of uncontrolled emissions by industries and vehicular emissions and crop burning, and also garbage burning. So we need to implement a proper effective policy mechanism, as well as it's also the responsibility of citizens to ensure that the pollutants are not being added to the environment, as well as making sure that the people around us, we are not letting them pollute the environment that we are living in, because ultimately whatever we give to the environment, we release in the environment, it's going to come back to us, and it's going to affect our quality of life.
So we need to understand that we at a very basic level need to reduce our carbon footprint, on which I'll come to you, madam, and I would want you to add to the conversation further. So when we do talk about from the viewpoint of the society and community at large, how do you then propose we as a Pakistani society can work towards shifting perceptions on ensuring that we as a Pakistani nation collectively work towards having a more clean and of course a more healthy environment? Because you see, the responsibility is something which should then be communal, it should be collective.
Shifting perceptions of cleanliness from an individual responsibility to a communal one, I think, requires a multifaceted approach which can involve education, community engagement, policy interventions, and fostering a sense of shared responsibility. When we talk about education and awareness, we can implement comprehensive education campaigns that highlight the importance of cleanliness, not only for personal health, but also for community well-being, and educate individuals about the consequences of poor sanitation practices and the collective benefit of maintaining a clean surrounding. We can have encourage community involvement in cleanliness initiatives by organizing cleanup drives, neighborhood cleanup days, and community beautification projects. Bring a sense of pride and ownership in the local environment by involving the residents in decision making and empowering them to take actions. We can have competitions between streets where to see who has the best clean street, and give the credit to them, and show the world or show their community who is doing better. To have a sense of competition between them, harness the power of social norms and peer influence to promote positive behaviors, encourage individuals to lead by examples and praise those who demonstrate good hygiene practices and environmental stewardship. Utilize in this era when social media is so important, utilize these social networks to disseminate messages about cleanliness and encourage adherence to communal cleanliness standards. Then similarly, infrastructure and accessibility is very important. Improve access to waste management services, sanitation facilities, clean water sources in communities. Invest in the development of adequate structure for waste disposal, recycling, sewage treatment, Similarly, collaborate with the local authorities, community leaders to ensure compliance with cleanliness standards. Engage stakeholders in collaborative initiatives focused on environmental conservation, sanitation improvement, and very importantly, behavior change interventions. By implementing, I think, these strategies, we can have a sense of collective responsibilities. Communities can cultivate a culture where cleanliness is not just a personal habit, but a shared societal value ingrained in the fabric of everyday life.
That's very rightly put by yourself, madam. So all in all, things that we do need to focus upon is of the fact to engage the community at large, to ensure that everybody is equally involved in cleanliness drives, and also to ensure that everybody at a very core level actually understands the significance of the same. On which I'll come to you, madam, and I would want you to comment on this, but more from a gender lens too, because we see overall, if you were to then analyze women and children per se, they are those stratas of the Pakistani society which are unfortunately more disproportionately impacted by cleanliness issues, or for that matter lack of hygiene. How would you comment on that?
Well, I would say, Fatma, that is a very pertinent point, because when we're talking about education, we are talking about how is that education then forwarded to those who need it the most. And when we are talking about raising awareness through education, I think we forget that the home-school connection is very important, and that's where the mother's role comes in. Is extremely important. And mothers as caregivers, mothers as people who are not just impacted but who would also instill those habits, need to have an equal say in how that environment is being impacted, and what kind of home practices can be then strengthened to the learning that comes from school is then strengthened at home as well.
Right. So do you propose in this regard, madam, that there need to be proper collaborations between teachers, educationists like yourself and the parents? Because you see, learning is something which is then just not restricted within the four corners of a classroom. You're learning every day in life wherever you go.
Exactly. So the point over here can be that the engagement of parents and mothers and families into what the learning is happening with regards to the education for sustainable development, because the UN Sustainable Development Goals are directly linked to how the world is shaping up in terms of the impact of on environment. So what can and help us as a society is to get communities to involve families in understanding what are the problems, what might be some solutions, and then very localized solutions.
Right, localized solutions.
We generally go for rather very grand designs. So students doing basic projects such as, okay, so they are taking little bits of information home, which is then shared with the family, and then a project that's done in collaboration with the something as simple as making soap at home.
Right.
You know, that little project can then be
or the very importance of hand washing. You see, in the times of COVID-19, we saw so many students coming up with these projects, and even schools, they were at that point in time extremely cognizant and very sensitive to such issues. Why should we not make this more of a sustainable practice?
Exactly.
Sir, coming to you, I would want you to add to what she said further. So when we talk about having localized solutions, what role do you feel can religious scholars like yourself play in this regard?
Well, religious scholars play a very important role, and I would say they are playing. And one thing which I think that we all again need to look at is the importance of masjid. Masjid is a community hub where everybody comes, and that's where we can have such, like for example, World Water Day we had the other day in March, right? So there was an awareness of water, like, and we know that our Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was very particular about not wasting water.
True.
So therefore, it's very important, and the ulama do emphasize on that, and there should be more should be done, and I think a collaborative effort.
Right,
like
with all
schools,
stakeholders involved.
Yeah, like schools going to the masjid, and or the ulama going to the schools.
Vice versa.
Yeah, so that sort of an effort will have a greater impact on the community towards a better cleanliness and a better place to live.
And in this regard, one thing that I would want you to actually delve upon is also the fact that when we do talk about cleanliness from an Islamic perspective, how is it so important to teach people, be it the elderly population, be it young children or even women for that matter, being clean is just not being respectful of your own self. It is also being equally respectful of others too. That you see, when we talk about such basic things, how they also relate with the concept of respect as well.
I would like to look at from another aspect. In fact, what I've seen is basically, there are two aspects of life which you get through cleanliness via Islam. That number one is discipline, because 5 times a prayer, you have to pray within that time. You have to cleanse yourself. So you need to be aware of that. The second is discipline, right? So these two aspects, if they come within an individual and within the community, they really make a great impact in terms of their performance, in terms of their living and all that. So Islam is upon that, is adamant on that. There is no, relaxation on that, to be very honest. Right. That and if you notice, for example, the wudu, that one aspect of it, and it's been a lot of scientific research been done on that, that it is a great way, and in terms of skin as well, there's been research done on that. I'd like to share a verse of the Quran with reference to that. It's Surah Baqarah in 222. God loves those who turn to Him in repentance, right, and then purify themselves, right. So if you notice here, there is a bond between repentance, relationship with God, and purifying yourself.
Right.
Right. And that includes physical and the inner purity as well.
Right, sir. On which I'll come to you, Dr. Saab, and I would want you to add to this further. So when we talk about this from the viewpoint of technology, more particularly AI, how do you feel can technology be used, that too in a constructive manner, when it comes to doing away with issues like that of lack of hygiene? Because we have seen that in cases more than one, be it in cases of proper waste management or for that matter smoke control, in countries, various countries so to speak, technology has been very successfully used.
Right. So Fatma, air quality monitoring is very important when it comes to controlling air emissions and controlling air pollution. Recently, Lahore Waste Management Company and Punjab Safe City Authority, they have decided to collaborate and work together on Clean Lahore. So they will be using the Safe City cameras to detect garbage heaps and take action accordingly. And also they will be using those Safe City cameras to detect the garbage burning and people involved, and they will be taking actions against them.
Right. And in this regard, it's also very pertinent to mention some of the key initiatives that the current Punjab Chief Minister Mariam Nawaz Sahiba has also taken, which are definitely very commendable. To start off with, we do have now the Clean and Green Punjab drive, which was launched under the directives of Punjab CM Mariam Nawaz Sahiba, the aim of which is, of course, to ensure that cleanliness is ensured throughout the province, that too with a deadline of 1 month. So definitely this is something very, commendable that way too. And I think one thing interesting is that the scope of this initiative is something which is then extended to both of villages as well as to cities too. In this regard, we also see another initiative launched by the name of Plant for Pakistan. In the longer run is very good for the environment per se. So when we talk about all these various initiatives of the government, more particularly the Punjab government, how do you view them as an environmentalist?
Exactly, because it's our responsibility at the end of the day that we carry out our responsibility of ensuring that environment is clean and we're not adding pollutants to the environment. And secondly, this plantation drive would be really helpful in combating air pollution. And I would also like to add that under the leadership of CM Mariam Nawaz Sahiba, another initiative on solid waste management has been is being proposed. And under this, they will be establishing waste management facilities in Sargodha and Sahiwal, along with 23 landfills in several divisions across the province.
Right.
So this will also promote a clean and healthy environment, as well as this would generate create employment opportunities as well. So
right, which is extremely important because you see
Definitely.
that way strengthening the economy too, and this is something that we do see happening in other parts of the world as
Definitely.
well, on which I would want you to comment further, but from the viewpoint of the media at large, because you see media has that power to make or break narratives. How do you propose can media work towards shifting our perceptions with regards to cleanliness? Because a lot of times we see that issues like these, they might be stigmatized, they might be overlooked, they might not be talked about.
Well, I think this very forum is an excellent example of that. We need to be talking more about this. There needs to be discussion and various perspectives coming in to address the same problem. So what happens is that generally there are wonderful policy initiatives coming in, there's a lot of support also coming in, but then it does not involve community engagement in the truer sense,
Right.
and getting the community to take ownership of that.
That's so true.
And therefore media along with education can play a very vital role. One of those examples could be having such talk shows, letting children lead such initiatives, and also schools collaborating with different organizations and networks to be talking about and leading a few campaigns. One example can be where children, based on their curricular learning, for instance in science and math, in social studies, they do different projects on looking at community environment issues.
True.
Conducting research on that, something as basic as looking at the water quality, looking at waste management, and then finding localized solutions.
That's
to that.
so true. That's very rightly put by yourself, madam, because in this regard, we also need to focus upon not only mainstream media, but also social media. You see, social media has that power. It can be that educational tool. If you don't, for some reason or the other, have access to electronic media or even print media, newspapers, magazines, you do have a phone at the end of the day, and you can have all this information available to you by the click of a button. So it goes back to the basics. I feel the social media has an extremely pivotal role to play here as well. On which, sir, I'll come to you and I would want you to contribute to the discussion further. So when we do talk about cleanliness or lack thereof from an Islamic viewpoint, how can you then actually bifurcate the relationship of cleanliness to be something which is then just not external per se? It is also something which at the end of the day can be internal too, because a lot of times we see that the religion, it places a lot of importance on one's purification of soul, on one's purification of heart too.
Beautiful question, Barrister Fatima. In Islam, we are responsible for two things. One is our body, the physical body that we mostly take care of it. The other is our soul, or the Quran calls it nafs. And then the Quran also tells us that there are different levels of it. And you have to train your nafs, you have to spiritually enhance yourself, the soul, to move from one level to another. Now, with reference to that, there's an important aspect that we need to look at. Many people think that this enhancement of spirituality is for some exclusive people. No, it is for every believer.
Right.
You may have heard the term called tazkiyah nafs. That's what it is. And when you're doing that, you see, you will realize that some people, they're driving and all of a sudden they'll stop their bicycle, motorcycle or their car, and there is something in the middle of the road. They
Right.
go and clear it out. Why is that? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it, that if there is something which is hindering someone, you go clear it out. That's a sadaqah. That's a good deed.
Right.
So there is a water leak there, and you just ignore it. You are actually ignoring the instructions of Rasulullah. So we got to do something. Whatever's happening in terms of resources, we are responsible
And
for
also
them.
that regard, it's very important to work towards preservation of resources, because you see that is another angle that we need to delve upon. Madam, coming towards you, I would like to quote examples of various countries. Like for example, in Singapore is known for its waste management initiatives. Then we also understand that in France, low emission zones have been established to restrict polluting vehicles in certain areas. What kind of localized solutions do you feel we need when it comes to addressing our core fundamental issues, that too which one way or the other lead to lack of hygiene, which one way or the other lead to lack of cleanliness per se?
So taking examples from all these countries, we can obviously adopt strategies that are more localized and that can be easily adopted by our communities. So when we look at examples like Mexico, they have an efficient transport system, and like you just mentioned, in Singapore, they have an efficient waste management system. Firstly, we should make sure that the waste management facilities in our society, in our country, or in our city, they are being carried out properly. It is also not only the responsibility of the Lahore Waste Management Company or the authorities, also the responsibility of the citizens to not loiter the environment. And secondly, when it comes to air pollution, by making small changes and by adopting green practices, we can easily adopt to a green lifestyle. For example, using bicycles to commute, and as well as using public transport instead of using our vehicles for transportation.
Right.
That will also lower down the pressure on the traffic congestion. And secondly, it's going to cut down the vehicular emissions. And not only that, using electric vehicles will save the fuel costs, as well as it's going to cut the air emissions. And when we talk about these things and saving the environment, we should look at how it's going to save us from the healthcare expenditures as well.
You're right, because you see, if you're not falling sick, then you're not going to the hospital.
Definitely.
So it is, everything is so interlinked. If you are clean, if you're healthy, by that way, the nutritional aspect per se, that is also taken care of.
Exactly.
So definitely, I think it goes without saying that cleanliness at a very basic level is that core fundamental of having that right to life to start off with, which of course is a fundamental right. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Mariam. Another question that I would want to put to you is the fact that when we do talk about destigmatizing and having more open and inclusive conversations about cleanliness, about hygiene, how particularly do you feel can we do just that?
Addressing social stigma associated with hygiene-related issues requires a combination of education, empathy, and creative inclusive spaces where open dialogue is encouraged. We should foster understanding and dispel myths surrounding hygiene-related issues through targeted education campaigns, provide accurate information about hygiene practices, their importance for health, and how certain conditions are not indicative of personal failure, but rather influenced by social determinants and environmental factors. We should approach hygiene-related issues with empathy and sensitivity, and recognizing the diverse circumstances and challenges individuals may face. Avoid judgmental language and attitudes, and instead, have a supportive environment where people feel comfortable discussing their hygiene concerns without fear of stigma or discrimination. Normalize discussions around hygiene practices, encourage questions, and create opportunities for peer-to-peer learning and support. Engage and empower communities to identify their own hygiene priorities and develop solutions that are contextually appropriate. We have role models like community leaders, educators, and healthcare providers to champion good hygiene practices and serve as role models. I think with implementing these strategies, we can include and we can create inclusive spaces where everyone feels comfortable and practice good hygiene habits. If you see in Malaysia, you have restaurants where they have soap and hand washing facility in their dining halls to promote hygiene practices, to promote safe hand washing. So we should have such interventions to have address these kind of hygiene related issues.
On which I'll come to you, and before we conclude today's show, so what would be your takeaway message with regards to today's conversation? How do you believe can we as a Pakistani society work towards having a more clean, a more healthy, and of course a more green Pakistan? Do you feel in this regard policies are something that we need to prioritize? Do you feel better implementation of the same policies, or do you feel that it comes back to the society at large? Because definitely we cannot ignore the importance of community engagement per se.
Well, I would agree with what you said, is that we need to bring all this together. There are great initiatives happening, but what is missing is that it needs to be done in congruence with our own local realities and greater ownership of the societies. Right now, the biggest, I would say, challenge is getting those right kind of practices and lifestyles into place, and society taking ownership of realizing that there's only one planet and we've only got one life.
Right. So we need to think about this at a very basic level. And for children, this is something that needs to be taught to them at a primary school level, because I know you've had that
Yes.
benefit of teaching not only primary school students but also middle school and high school too. On which I'll come to you, sir. So what would your message be for all the viewers out there when it comes to actually understanding and also appreciating the importance of cleanliness, that too from a religious perspective? Why is it so important for us as Muslims to bifurcate, to sit back, to analyze the core fundamental importance of issues like cleanliness, and these perhaps might be issues which we might very conveniently ignore otherwise?
Mr. Saiba, as I said in the beginning of the program, our beloved Prophet ﷺ said that cleanliness is half of Iman. So this is the importance. And we have to start at an individual level. So every individual needs to look at, what's my responsibility, what am I contributing to my environment around me for the cleanliness. That will result in a communal approach towards better cleanliness. One, the imams or the masjids and the community centers, they need to work on that. Another very important aspect is the training program for mothers, because mother is the core from where we develop good habits.
Right.
Right. And then also in terms of policy as well, and there should be events and all that. And one aspect I would like to say is not that we all are doing bad and we are in the negative graph or something. Yes, we have facing problems, but alhamdulillah, we are some of those people who do a lot of recycling, right? And we believe, and this trend is, although is going away, because now we've got a concept of replacement stuff rather than, reusing them. So these type of, and when small DIY projects in schools and all that, because that's where you change things.
And see, adding to what you said basically, and these projects are those projects which should just not be one-off events. They should be sustained, that too at all levels of schools and of course colleges and universities too. Madam, coming towards you, and before we conclude today's show, so what are the practical tips that you would want to give to the people out there, especially when it comes to maneuvering and changing their lifestyle so as to collectively work towards a more cleaner and a greener Pakistani society?
First of all, a very generic that we need to have a very effective policy mechanism and everyone needs to come on board. But secondly, small changes that we can make in our everyday life that are environmental friendly. Like sir just mentioned, that reuse and recycling. We can recycle plastic bottles. We can use reusable plastic, reusable shopping bags instead of plastic bags. Secondly, we can use compost instead of synthetic fertilizers, which also tackles the issue of solid waste. And also we can use carpooling and using bicycles to commute. Like I previously mentioned, it's going to tackle air pollution.
Right, and not waste water to start off
definitely.
Or for that matter, put the electricity bulbs off when you're not using them.
Not unplugging the electric gadgets when they're not being used, because this is going to save the resources. We're already facing the electricity issues. And
also in the larger picture, overall working towards adopting greener infrastructure, so to speak, because I feel that is one area that we seriously need to focus upon, on which I'll come to you, Ms. Mariam, and before we conclude today's show. So my last question to you would be that how do you all in all then propose we as a Pakistani society can actually work towards having more localized solutions, that too with regards to ensuring that we collectively work towards a more clean and a green Pakistan? In this regard, do you feel technology integration is something that we need to prioritize, or do you feel that grassroots initiatives are something that we need to work upon?
To mobilize local communities to take ownership of cleanliness, community engagement and empowerment is very critical. Facilitate participatory processes where community members identify their hygiene priorities, like I talked before, develop their own action plans and lead these cleanliness initiatives. We should encourage the formation of such community-based organizations, committees dedicated to promoting hygiene and sanitation, provide education and training on effective hygiene practices, and then have a sense of pride and ownership in the community's well-being, celebrating achievements and recognizing individuals who contribute to cleanliness efforts. You've talked in the question that we should harness the technology that is available to us now. We have artificial intelligence now. We can leverage these digital platforms, including mobile apps, social media, online forums, heat mapping, to see where such problems are existing and to deliver targeted hygiene messaging, interactive education content, and virtual training sessions. I think virtual training sessions are gives you a platform which is amazing. You can have virtual sessions for everyone, for schools and for workplaces, community gatherings, and then collaborate with the local influencers and community leaders to amplify these messages through digital channels like you are doing today, to bring in these topics in our normal discussions, educate communities, and especially the governments need to monitor infrastructure and empower individuals to take ownership of their own hygiene and sanitation needs.
Right, madam, your point is noted. On which note I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Ms. Nadia. And thank you so much, Ms. Mariam, for your precious time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about cleanliness, that too from, of course, a multi-dimensional perspective. We spoke about the fact that, how does cleanliness or lack thereof then not only impact the society, but also individuals and public's health. If we are serious as a Pakistani society in working towards a cleaner and, of course, a more greener and healthier Pakistan, then we definitely need to educate people the importance of being clean. We need to tell people, we need to reiterate the fact that when it comes to ensuring that we collectively strive towards a more cleaner society, this definitely should just not be a personal habit, rather it should be a shared societal sentiment. Thank you for watching The Society. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.